Hello, everyone, and very happy New Year. First and foremost, I hope everybody had great holidays and spent some time with friends and family. Had a great end of the 2022 year and are starting the 2023 year off with a bang. We've been taking some time off, all of us at License Q, and have still have some time off, but I did want to already make this video and have that come out as soon as our next newsletter landed, so that you all know what's been going on in the world of Microsoft. Not a lot has happened, so I have 4 items to discuss with you, 5 actually, that are new in the product terms. Licensing news-wise, other than what is in the product terms, I haven't seen a lot come by, aside from these points here. So let's dive right in. It will be a short video, and then everybody can go back to their regular routines. I hope you do find this valuable. Let me know if you found some other updates that you deem interesting or not, and that we can maybe write a topic about. Okay, so thank you for following us. The first item is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So Microsoft has released some clarification on the page of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint around the use on devices managed by third parties. So with all the changes going on in the outsourcing and hosted world with Microsoft licensing, they deemed it necessary to make this change. And they're stating here that notwithstanding the outsourcing software management clause, the customers may use Defender for Endpoint with user desktops running on Microsoft Azure, your own devices, or devices that are under day-to-day management and control of third parties. So you can manage through your own licenses any device that is on one of these platforms. So that should be a good clarification here. Then, for a big change on the privacy and security terms, Microsoft has added language that described the EU data boundary services. So what was in the news in the past week was that Microsoft has announced that they will only host data that is in the EU data center. They won't move anything outside of it. It was sometimes a bit of a gray area on how they handle things. Microsoft has currently set everything up in such a way, shape, and form that they state that they will only always host the data in EU. And that's called out in this entire clause, the EU data boundary services. So what you see here, the EU data boundary services mean that Microsoft computers, computing environment, and physical data centers located solely in the EU and the European Free Trade Association, EFTA. The term EU data boundary service applies only to the online services in the table below, excluding any previews. So they have called out the different Microsoft clouds, Azure, all Azure services that enable deployment in a region within the EU data boundary, and the following non-regional services: Azure Advisor, Azure Bot Service, etc. For Dynamics 365, all the products are covered under the EU data boundary services are called out as well. Business Central, Commerce, Customer Insights, etc., etc. And for Microsoft 365, you can see a whole list of products as well, including things like FIFA, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, all the different security and compliance products that you see or know of. So then the location of customer data for EU data boundary services. For EU data boundary services, Microsoft will store and process the customer data within the EU data boundary as detailed below. The customer must configure EU data boundary services as follows. For Azure, you must deploy the service into an Azure region located in the EU data boundary. And for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, if you provision a tenant with a billing address in the EU or EFTA, that tenant will be in scope for the EU data boundary. For Microsoft 365, if a customer provisions a tenant with a billing address in the EU or EFTA, that tenant will be in scope for the EU data boundary as well, except for those tenants where customer has also purchased Microsoft 365 Multi-Geo Capabilities add-on. The use of EU data boundary services may result in limited transfers of customers' data outside the EU data boundary, as set forth further below and further detailed in transparency documentation for the EU data boundary located at the privacy website of Microsoft or its successor location. Any such transfers will be conducted in accordance with the data protection addendum in the product terms. So remote access, Microsoft personnel located outside of the EU data boundary may remotely access data processing systems in the EU as necessary to operate, troubleshoot, and secure the EU data boundary services. Customer-initiated transfers, so that's basically on you. Customers may initiate transfers outside the EU data boundary, such as by accessing EU data boundary services from locations outside the EU data boundary, sending an email to a recipient located outside the EU data boundary, or use of EU data boundary services in combination with other services not in EU data boundary. Microsoft transfers limited data outside of the EU as necessary to detect and protect customers against security threats. Directory data, Microsoft may replicate the limited directory data from the Azure Active Directory outside the EU data boundary to provide their services. And network transit, to reduce routing latency and to maintain routing resilience, Microsoft uses variable network paths that may occasionally result in transit of data outside the EU. Finally, service-specific transfers. You can see the transparency documentation referenced above for information about transfers applicable to specific EU data boundary services. So to go to the website listed here, https://learn.microsoft.com, the privacy website. You should probably be able to find it, or we can post it in the comments when we do post this online. It's quite a big change, so they haven't been sitting still over the Christmas break and actually done something about a regulatory requirement for most EU companies is that the data stays within the EU. So for the next item, Azure Data Box, Azure Stack Edge, and Azure Stack Hub ruggedized terms. Remove terms related to StorSimple as it's been retired, and you can see that the entire section in the bottom of this page has been removed. Finally, for January, updated the software assurance labs term based on recent servicing channel changes as they are no longer there. Remove desktop analytics from the list of products with additional license terms for online service. So you can see that here on the page if you scroll down. Desktop analytics has been removed as an additional license term for online services. And if we go further down below, Windows Enterprise General Availability Channel must be uninstalled on any licensed device if software assurance coverage lapses. This used to read semi-annual. Semi-annual channel release has been deprecated and is now called the General Availability Channel, which is basically means always updated as far as I can summarize it in 3 words or less. And the final change was in December 12th already. I did highlight it in the last video we did. Azure Services and Dynamics 365 services. They added back the Azure Communication Services terms that were intentionally removed in the December 1st update. I thought they might have moved it somewhere else, but they did make a mistake here and removed this on accident where it should not have been removed. So they made an interim change to it. So that's basically it for me for now. Just a short video, 10 minutes. I hope this is still useful to you. And with that, I want to thank you and say until next time. Bye.